the entity that was harmed, which would be Paul Weiss itself. And it looks like Paul Weiss, far from taking legal action against Trump, are perfectly content to fully bend the knee to him.
Yeah. This is now, unless there are other parties that might have standing that might be harmed by this, apparently ugly bargain that Paul Weiss and Donald Trump just struck. If they're harmed, they might have standing to bring suit, but I think it unlikely. You're right. It really is Paul Weiss that would have to bring a legal challenge against, again, what feels like extortion. I mean, if you kind of boil it down to its basics, this is like if a county building inspector came to your house and said, yeah, I'll make sure your deck or the addition to your home passes inspection if you grease my palm with $500. Or if the homeowner said to the inspector, hey, I'll grease your palm with $500 if you pass my deck, the inspection. That's what this is, right? This is something that is a misuse of the power, the authority of government, the president. And it is something that I am shocked, quite frankly, that a law firm like Paul Weiss would capitulate to.
What does their capitulation do to the broader effort for law firms to be able to stand up against Trump?
I think it will inspire and embolden Donald Trump to continue to do this to even more law firms, because look at what he just landed courtesy of this act, saying I'm going to punish Paul Weiss. He got himself $40 million in free legal services. Why wouldn't he continue to go after other law firms looking for the same political payday from them?
Good. I'm gonna ask a question that I asked before, but in a little bit of a different way. If you have somebody like the President of the United States attempting to extort a smaller entity, an entity that they would have a lot of control over their finances, over their business, it doesn't exactly seem out of the question, outside the realm of logic, that they would succumb to Trump's demands because of that power imbalance and because they are the victim of that extortion attempt. And so how could it be that it's allowed to continue without any other entity stepping in and putting a stop to it? This is almost like, look, I'm not excusing Paul Weiss because I think that they could have very well done what Perkins Coie is doing and actually fought this. But there is a part of me that understands that they are still the victim of an extortion attempt. And so does it lend itself to reason that the only entity that would be able to bring suit against Donald Trump or this administration would be the victim of the extortion attempt, who clearly has a lot more to lose if they were to take an aggressive, hostile posture?
Yeah, a couple of layers there. So first of all, usually law enforcement tries to protect the victims even when the victims are unwilling or unable to protect themselves. It looks like Paul Weiss, assuming this would qualify under the elements of the crime of extortion, it looks like Paul Weiss was unwilling to buck the president. Maybe they didn't want to get punished even more severely. Maybe they were making a cost-benefit analysis and they were protecting their profit margin. Shame on them if they were, because this continues to degrade our democracy, giving in to an aspiring dictator. But ordinarily, Brian, and let me use another very quick analogy. I handled a lot of domestic violence cases, including domestic violence murder cases. Often the victim of the domestic violence was unwilling or unable to stand up for themselves. So even if they didn't want to bring charges, we brought charges as the prosecutors to protect the victim, even when the victim didn't seem to be in a position to protect themselves, and to protect the balance of society against the perpetrator. But so when the victims are unable or unwilling to protect themselves, you know who's supposed to protect them? Law enforcement. Who would that be in this instance?
Would it be the DOJ in this instance?
The FBI, the federal prosecutors. It would be the Department of Justice. But do you really think Pam Bondi, Emile Bove, Todd Blanche, and those of their ilk, Trump lawyers, all are going to step up and put a stop to anything that Donald Trump is doing that might cross a legal line? Not going to happen. But can I shift my ire and my complaint for just a minute to mainstream media, Brian?
Yeah.
Because when I saw this story reported out this morning, I made the mistake of turning on cable news, And I actually saw people saying things like, well, this is a really unconventional negotiation that Donald Trump is undertaking, punishing a law firm, receiving $40 million in legal services and saying, oh, well, then I won't punish you anymore. This is a really unconventional form of negotiation by a president. Brian, that would be like saying if Donald Trump was out on the White House lawn shooting and killing people, if the media reported that as a really unconventional form of population control. No,
Yeah.
It would be murder. It would be a crime. And this, as I say, looks a lot like the crime of extortion when you drill down and look at the legal elements of extortion.
Well, look, I mean, that is the perfect encapsulation of the ways in which our media has normalized not just this event, but so much of what Trump has done before. So if I could take a quick moment to ask folks who are watching right now, if you want to support the work that we do, support independent media more broadly, please make sure to subscribe to both of our channels. Glenn is fast on his way to 1 million subscribers, so if you haven't yet subscribed yet to his YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. Glenn, what message would you send then to the clients of Paul Weiss who, look, they have autonomy, they can choose where to give their business in light of the fact that Paul Weiss decided not to stand up in very much the same way that other law firms are standing up to this administration, but to capitulate and make it more difficult for the law firms who are actually fighting this thing and embolden Trump even further to think, hey, what I'm doing is okay. Basically, this brand new legalized form of extortion by virtue of the fact that his cronies in the DOJ are too chicken shit to do anything about it.
Brian, Paul Weiss that firm has done a lot of great work. They have, I think, 1,000 or more lawyers across their several offices, and I'm sure, most of them are excellent lawyers and ethical professionals. The problem becomes, what message are you sending to potential clients who are wondering if they want to retain your services to fight their battles, particularly to fight their battles against the federal government that every day is involved in abuse, overreach, corruption, and outright criminality? Do those clients decide that they're going to throw in their legal lot with a Paul Weiss, or are they going to go to a Perkins Coie or another firm that has opted to stand up against this kind of, autocracy that Donald Trump is practicing? I'm not going to say, boycott this firm or boycott that firm, but I think clients need to make informed decisions about what kind of a law firm they want to plug into. Is it they want one that stands up to dictatorship, autocracy, and tyranny, or one that lays down in the face of those things?
And Glenn, I think the most telling part of all of this is that we're seeing Trump employ these practices not just as it relates to big law, but also as it relates to the media. We've obviously seen, CBS, ABC lay down in the face of Trump. These tech billionaires, Xu at TikTok, Mark Zuckerberg at Meta. I mean, everybody who he beckons over to the White House immediately crawls over there and offers him whatever concessions they want. We've seen it in the entertainment aspect of things with Amazon spending $40 million on a Melania biopic that I'm sure people are falling over themselves to watch. And in just arena after arena after arena, Trump is showing that he is willing to extort every single entity that he comes across. But almost worse than that is the fact that so many of these entities are willing to be extorted as opposed to recognizing the power that they would hold by virtue of banding together, basically. And yet, rather than do that, which would not only make them stronger, but also push back in the face of this overt tyranny that you just referenced, they've opted to, cow in the face of Trump instead.
Yeah, I mean, the question will be asked, where were you when Trump came first for the immigrants, came for the LGBTQ community, came for big law, came for big tech? Where were you? Were you standing up? Were you laying down? Were you on the sidelines, not wanting to get involved in the fight for a healthy, indeed a viable American democracy? Where were you? I think people need to stand up and fight, and that's why, Brian, not to toot our own horn, we are independent media. We don't have corporate sponsorship. We don't have bosses giving us editorial direction about what we can say.